Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start the bulletin with a look at the top headlines this hour. US launches airstrikes on ISIS targets in Syria after death of 2 American soldiers by ISIS on December 13 in Palmyra. US says dozens of targets tied to the ISIS targeted. Thousands of long-awaited Epstein files released. US Justice Department published first batch of documents featuring Bill Clinton and Michael Jackson. Files also show little or no mention of Trump. Jailed ex-Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi sentenced to 17 years in the jail in the Toshkhana corruption case linked to corruption and sale of state gifts. UNO's government says 7 arrested over lynching of 27-year-old Hindu man in Bangladesh's Mymensingh over blasphemy allegations. UNO said that the arrests followed the coordinated action by RB units. Telangana DGP says the Bondi Beach gunman visited Hyderabad 6 times since 2000. Deceased attacker Sajid Akram renewed his passport in Hyderabad in 2022. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says no peace possible unless Hamas disarms, expresses confidence that countries will send troops to Gaza force. Meanwhile, Hamas says that Miami talks might end Israel's violation. US halts green card lottery after MIT professor Brown University killings. Police say misinformation on complicated Brown University shooting probe. Document shows Nexperia's chip unit switches to local firms for wafer supplies. This is after the Dutch firm stopped supplying raw materials after corporate dispute. And the viewers, let's start the bulletin with some news now coming in from Bangladesh, where the interim government led by Mohammed Yunus has arrested 7 people in connection with the killing of a Hindu man, Deepu Chandra Das. This was following allegations of blasphemy. The arrests were carried out by the Rapid Action Battalion 2 days after the incident in Valuka in Mymensingh. According to officials, Das was a 27-year-old garment factory worker and he was attacked by a mob after he was accused of making derogatory remarks about Prophet Muhammad. He later died from the assault. The government condemned the killing, stressing that mob violence has no place in what it called a new Bangladesh, and pledged strict legal action against those responsible. The lynching occurred amid heightened political tension and protests across Bangladesh following the death of radical political activist Sharif Osman Hadi, who had been shot during an election campaign event and later died in Singapore. Bangladeshi authorities said investigations are ongoing and assured that justice will be pursued under the law. And I'm now joined in by Ambassador Veena Sikri, who is the former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, and she joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us once again here at NewsX World. Now, yesterday we were talking about the lynching of the Hindu man in Bangladesh, and today there has been some action from Bangladesh, and Yunus has made a statement to say that 7 people have now been arrested for blasphemy. Yesterday we were also speaking and saying how there is now mobocracy in Bangladesh. It's going rogue. It's a complete state of anarchy. Your comments on this arrest of 7 people there in connection to the Hindu man?
Well, I think that, yesterday all the channels, even in India, were just going on and on about Osman Hadi and about what had happened to him.
Yeah.
And on so many channels, I said that, look, what about Deepu Chandra Das?
Yes.
The way in which he was killed, the way he was accused of blasphemy and then beaten to death and his body put on a stake, burnt and then taken off and thrown on the highway. It was barbaric. It is a medieval act, not something belonging to the 21st century. I think all the channels then rallied around and there's been a lot of publicity about him. And in response to that, as you said, Mohammed Yunus said, oh, there's no place, etc. But I must tell you, that while, yes, on the face of it, 7 people have been arrested, there are innumerable videos about this event, about the putting of the body at the stake. There are innumerable videos, possibly 50, 60 people there. And the police arresting 7, who are going to very likely be released on bail very, very soon, is just a showpiece action. It's just a showpiece. Because all these 18 months since Muhammad Yunus has come to power, from the 5th of August onwards, there have been attacks on the minorities, the Hindus, the Christians, the Buddhists, the Sufis, the Ahmadiyyas, absolutely violent attacks, rapes, lynchings, killings, destruction of property, taking over of businesses, all that, forcing Hindu professors to resign, Hindu primary teachers to resign by the democracy. They surround them and force them to resign. And all the while that this has been happening, Muhammad Yunus has been in complete denial. He had just given one-line replies to everybody saying fake news from India. Absolutely, he had not accepted any of these things. And even the BBC has documented sometimes some of these atrocities, but they also, after a while, have just kept quiet about this. This kind of, absolute venomous and medieval, I would say this is like going back to the 14th and 15th century, these kind of attacks that have taken place on the Hindus and the other minorities in Bangladesh. But the people and the media coverage has been zero. Zero media coverage in Bangladesh on this, no interest at all. And since Muhammad Yunus dismisses it as fake news from India, the Indian media has kept quiet about it, and the world also says, okay, fake news from India. So I think after this 18 months of total denial, because of yesterday's huge publicity on Deepu Chandra Das's brutal killing, you today have an arrest of 7 people, but they will never be punished. They will be released on bail, as has happened before. I remember one other incident which also came in the media, and then, 2 people have been arrested. No report at all. Even the Human Rights Commissioner report, Volker Turk report, did not document in full the atrocities on the Hindus. Did not say anything about that. So I think that this kind of a global silence on the absolutely, communal atrocities being committed by the Bangladesh regime, it's an interim regime, it's not a government, it's not constitutional, it's not legal, but they are allowing this perpetration to frighten the minorities into leaving. But the Hindu youth and other Buddhist Christian youth, they have said, no, we're not leaving, we are staying here. This is our country. We are citizens of this country. We want our rights. And we had Chinmoy Das, who had made a list of 8 points asking but he's been thrown in jail. And he's been in jail for a year without trial, without framing of charges, without anything. Why aren't they giving justice to Chinmoy Das?
In fact, how would you want to respond to his claim that it's a new Bangladesh? Is he living in some kind of denial or under a rock to make these statements?
Absolutely. New Bangladesh means a Bangladesh controlled by the Jamaat-e-Islami. The Jamaat-e-Islami has been in power since 8th of August 2024. The entire regime change operation was conducted by the Jamaat-e-Islami with the support of Pakistan and with the backing of the external powers of the West. And they have they want to perpetuate their control. They want to bring a caliphate into Bangladesh. They want Sharia law to come into Bangladesh. This is the new Bangladesh he's talking about. He is banning the Awami League from participating in elections. Just tell me where it can be a democratic society, what definition of new Bangladesh you have when you're banning parties like Awami League and Jatiya Party from taking part in elections. Why are you scared? In Sri Lanka in 2022, there was a regime change operation, anger of the youth against the Rajapaksa government. And the government was brought down and there was, they were exiled and they came back. But when the elections took place, Rajapaksa's party was allowed to participate in the election.
In fact, there are some reports that even the Awami League may be allowed to contest. So if it's banned, how is that going to be allowed? For the Awami League to contest when Sheikh Hasina is been sentenced in absentia. Do you have any information on that regard?
No, well, I think that the first thing is that Awami League has not been banned. The activities of the Awami League has been banned. Actually, Muhammad Yunus has confirmed this. He gave an interview to some Western media person in New York in September, 2.5 months ago. And there he was asked, why have you banned the Awami League? He said, no, I have not banned the Awami League. I have only banned the activities of Awami League. So that person then asked him that can they take part in the elections? He said, that is up to the Election Commission. So this is an executive decision. This is not at all any kind of a banning that should be taken as the last word. There is no way. And why is it? On what basis? Where is the trial? You can't just do by an executive order ban the largest political party in Bangladesh. That's not going to carry any kind of credibility at all.
Yeah. In fact, ma'am, I'd like to draw your attention to the protests that were happening in India also, the Sar Tansit Juda threats and the slogans that were chanting. Essentially, my question coming from the lynching of the Hindu man now in Bangladesh, of course, makes one remember the similar slogans and threats and the protests and the riots that took place back in India over some comments made over Prophet Muhammad.
This kind of a false accusation is very, very common in Bangladesh. It happens all the time to the minority community. In every village, suddenly you will see that some innocent Hindu youth receives a message on his Facebook, and within seconds, he is accused of sending that message, and he is accused of, saying incorrect things about Prophet Muhammad. This strategy is very common. And I think, yes, you're right. In India, also the same strategy was there. Things which everybody else is saying, you particularly pick on one person and say, no, now we are going to, pass a death sentence against you. I think the courts must step in and say that such thing that should not be allowed at all. The person making the accusation should be brought to book and asked why is he making that accusation. So I think that this is a very important aspect of law and equality before the law and judicial consistency in seeing how false accusation can then be weaponized. You make a false accusation, then you weaponize it, and you come and arrest that person and throw him into jail. In this case, he's been killed. In this case, in Bangladesh, that person, after the accusation was made, has been killed by a mob.
Yeah.
That is the democracy prevalent in Bangladesh all the time. And the mob has killed him, and then they try to put his body on a stake and burn it. All kind. I mean, it's so cruel. It doesn't even bear repetition. It's not civilized.
Absolutely.
Well,
and then, yeah, sure, go on, please.
No, and then, Muhammad Yunus, who has ignored hundreds of such incidents, thousands of deaths, people who have been forced to resign, properties have been taken over, businesses have been taken over. Why doesn't he give justice to all those people?
Yeah.
What is the new Bangladesh he's talking about? He's talking about a new, very selective Bangladesh, which omits the Awami League, which wants to pressurize all the supporters of Awami League because the vote bank is still intact. We want to pressurize all the people who supported the Liberation War of 1971, who attach a lot of high importance to the values of the Liberation War. There are many people even beyond the Awami League in Bangladesh. They may not like Sheikh Hasina, but they support the values of the Liberation War. And those people have been completely sidelined. They're not allowed. And you have a handful of even Muhammad Yunus himself called them fringe elements. Handful of the so-called radical people who come on the streets all the time and shout slogans that they're told to shout. So this is not any kind of new Bangladesh. This is an obliteration of the values of 1971 because Pakistan is trying to re-embed itself in Bangladesh, bring back the pre-1971 regime.
All right, ma'am, I requested to stay on as we move on to some news coming in from Pakistan. Viewers, a special court in Pakistan has sentenced former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi to 17 years in prison, each in the Toshkhana 2 corruption case. The verdict was delivered on Saturday by Special Judge Central Shahrukh Ajamand during proceedings held at Rawalpindi's Adiala jail, where Khan is currently incarcerated. The case involves an expensive Bulgari jewelry set gifted to Khan by the Saudi Crown Prince during an official visit in May 2021. The prosecutors said the item was later purchased at a heavily undervalued price, constituting criminal breach of trust. The court handed down 10 years of rigorous imprisonment under Pakistan's penal code provisions, along with 7 additional years under anti-corruption laws, and imposed fines of rupees 16.4 million each. Khan and Bibi have denied the charges, calling them politically motivated, and their lawyers say the verdict will be challenged in the High Court. Khan has been jailed since August 2023 and is already serving a 14-year sentence in another corruption case with further trials pending. The ruling comes amid mounting domestic and international criticism over Khan's treatment in custody, including concerns raised by the United Nations. And I now request Ambassador Veena Sikri to join us back in the discussion here. Ambassador Sikri, is there any likelihood that Imran Khan is ever going to be out of jail?
The Pakistan judicial system, I think Bangladesh and Pakistan are now following the same totally one-sided, totally compromised judicial system. In Bangladesh also, after the regime change operation, the first thing that happened, the mobs went and surrounded the existing chief justices and high court justices and even the criminal tribunal justices and surrounded them and forced them to resign. And then the judges that came in their place were appointed by the Jamaat-e-Islami, and they're doing the bidding of the Jamaat-e-Islami. Pakistan is a very similar situation, where the judges have been appointed, and now in the new 27th Amendment, they've been coerced. They can be hauled up. The independence of the judiciary is officially gone. So, I mean, if you're going to discuss a court sentence, I don't know on what basis we can do it, because when the independence of the judiciary is no longer there, what credibility can you give to a justice, to a statement like this, to a judgment like this? I don't think you can give any credibility. It just shows that the army which is in power, that Asim Munir now has special powers. He's virtually the ruler of Pakistan. So he wants to keep Imran Khan in jail. That's all. He's nervous about having. It's the same thing in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, they're banning the Awami League from taking part in elections because they're too scared of the popular support for Awami League. In Pakistan, they're giving fake sentences to judgments against Imran Khan and keeping him in jail for 17 years because they're scared of Imran Khan's popularity and what will what will happen when he comes out of jail.
Yeah.
So I think it's a parallel situation, and I'm really amazed that the world community is keeping entirely silent on this.
All right. Well, thank you, Veena Sikri, for joining us in this discussion. Ma'am, I thank you for taking time out to speak to us. And moving on, viewers, US President Donald Trump now says that he ordered a massive military strike against Islamic State targets in Syria. Speaking at a rally in North Carolina on Friday, Trump said that the operation was carried out in retaliation for a suspected Islamic State attack that killed 3 US personnel last week. He had earlier vowed a strong response following the incident. On social media, Trump said the Syrian government fully supported the strikes. Syria later reiterated its commitment to fighting the Islamic State, saying it would ensure the group has no safe havens on its territory. According to the US military, 2 US Army soldiers and a civilian interpreter were killed last Saturday in Palmyra when an attacker targeted a convoy of American and Syrian forces. 3 other US soldiers were wounded in the attack. According to reports, 5 people have been killed in the first round of strikes carried out by US forces across Syria. Let's listen in to what the US president said about the strikes.
And I'm also pleased to announce that just 2 hours ago, we hit the ISIS thugs in Syria who were trying to regroup after their decimation by the Trump administration 5 years ago. We hit them hard. I ordered a massive strike on the terrorists that killed our 3 great patriots last week. 2 soldiers, 1 interpreter, all great people. And it was very successful. It was precision. We hit every site flawlessly, and we are restoring peace through strength. We're all over the world.
I'm now joined in by Peter Baum, who's the editor at the Weekly Blitz, and he joins us live from London. Thank you, Peter, for speaking to us. Peter, now Trump, of course, issuing that statement on firing retaliatory strikes on ISIS targets, and of course says it is in retaliation to the killing of the Israeli and American troops deployed there. But how real is the threat of ISIS even as of now, after its caliphate and its in Syria? Iraq was fallen in 2019. Talk to us more about the modus operandi and what are its primary targets in today's day and age.
Yeah, indeed, a very, very important development here overnight. The retaliation against against ISIS for the killing of the US personnel in Syria was expected. Make no mistake about that. There was no way the Trump administration was going to just sit back and allow their people to be killed by those ISIS extremists. But what is very, very concerning here is that Trump is now supporting, as we've seen, as are all the major players, the new regime in Syria. And ISIS, by making the attack on the American troops, sent a warning signal, a statement to the Gilani regime. Now, just remember, up until the fall of Assad, the extremists in Syria were united as one. Now it seems they have split into two separate factions. The one, the Syrian government that seems to be accepted by the United Nations and by Western democracies, indeed has been encouraged by promises of investment, etc. And the ISIS element, which is still very strong in the Syrian countryside. Other than Damascus, Syria is ungovernable, and the ISIS elements have now split between the pro-Syrian government, who were, let's face it, formerly ISIS, and the remnants of ISIS, which made the statement against the Syrian regime. It will be very interesting to see what Turkey's comments would be about this. I've been trying to follow them up in Turkish media, and so far Erdogan has made a very, I would say, mild statement in support of the Trump action, but I would have thought Trump would have expected something stronger from Erdogan, who he considers an ally, especially a NATO member in the region. So at the moment, Syria, the Gilani government, again, some of their elements are being attacked by ISIS as well. Let's not forget that. So Syria is potentially at the brink of another civil war, but this time with two separate forces that were formerly one.
All right, and how real is the threat of ISIS affiliates? In fact, we've recently seen the Bondi Beach attack, where the authorities have said that the attackers were linked to ISIS, probably, or they were at least inspired by ISIS. So even if the caliphate may have come down, there are ISIS or ISIL affiliates that continue to operate through different parts of the world. They get radicalized online and then carry out these deadly attacks.
How correct you are in that statement. Definitely, ISIS has been spreading its tentacles out globally, where supporters, sympathizers have been trained militarily to carry out acts of terror, not only in Western democracies as we've seen very recently, but as you've experienced in India, all over the African continent as well, and in Asia. So the ISIS threat, by using proxies, either individuals or groups of 2 or 3, perhaps more, trained and funded, and let's face it, it's the work of the Muslim Brotherhood that are funding these elements. The threat of attacks in Western societies, in democracies, is very, very real. It's not only in the Middle East, where naturally the major militia of ISIS are strong, as we've seen in Syria and places like Iraq, but by funding and weaponizing groups of individuals, extremists who have been trained under ISIS, the threat is very, very real, and I don't think Western society has woken up to how serious that threat is.
Now I want to ask you another question. Trump and the West have been accused of hypocrisy when it comes to involvement in the Middle East, and some in fact say that the West's involvement in the Middle East provokes these ISIS affiliates to carry out such strikes, especially when the US forces are actually withdrawn from the territory.
No, I reject that notion. The idea of a Muslim, Islamic, totalitarian, fundamentalist empire has been in the making for the last 100 years. The agenda, in fact, I've just written an article about this in Weekly Bits. The agenda of the Muslim Brotherhood is been to dilute Judeo-Christian values and for that matter Hinduism, and then eventually destroy it. And they will do this by military means combined with using charities worldwide to gain sympathy and support. The main funder of the Muslim Brotherhood is Qatar, and they use proxies, whether it's by funding Islamic studies in universities or by the propaganda channel Al Jazeera. The idea that Western political hypocrisy in the Middle East is the root cause of ISIS terrorism is absolute rubbish. It's not that at all.
But would you at least concede that the Western involvement propagates or instills some kind of regional instability, which the ISIS then exploits?
ISIS will exploit any opportunity whereby they see that anti-Western bad faith actors would support that kind of notion. In the West, we have the far left progressive movement, which has aligned itself to Islamic fundamentalism. It's an absurdity, but that's what we've seen. So therefore, exploiting these subservient stooges to extreme Islamism is a good propaganda win for the ISIS terrorists. But the idea that it's Western double standards in the Middle East is absolute rubbish. In fact, we've seen that a number of Muslim countries have themselves banned the Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS. So where does one draw the line and say, oh, those Islamic nations accusing the West of hypocrisy against those Islamic nations who actually support the West in what they're doing in trying to challenge Islamic fundamentalism? So no, going back to your original question, the West can be accused of many things, but the facts are that their actions in the Middle East is not the root cause of the success of ISIS globally. The root cause is the funding by Qatar, using the Muslim Brotherhood as an octopus to spread the tentacles of Islamic fundamentalism, not only in the West, but also in Asia, in India and Africa too.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Peter Baum, for joining us. It's a pleasure speaking to you as always. And with that, viewers, let's move on. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the United States hopes that talks between Lebanese authorities and Israel would lead to a strong Lebanese government and see the Hezbollah terrorist group disarmed. This comes as the committee overseeing the Hezbollah-Israel troops in Lebanon held its 15th meeting on December 19. The meeting reflected a long-standing U.S. push to broaden talks between both sides beyond monitoring the 2024 ceasefire. Israel has publicly urged Lebanese authorities to fulfill a commitment under the truce to disarm Hezbollah, warning that it would act as necessary if Lebanon does not take steps against the terror group. Let's in fact listen into Rubio.
We're hopeful. Look, at the end of the day, the goal everybody shares is a strong Lebanese government that controls the country and Hezbollah is disarmed. They're no longer an armed element that can threaten Israel's security. That's the goal here. And we have tried to, in a cooperative way, to do everything we can to empower the Lebanese government to have the ability to do that. And so I hope that's what these talks are aimed towards, and we'll be supportive in every way we can to achieve that outcome. What I think is abundantly clear to everybody is no one is in favor of a Hezbollah that can once again threaten the region, act as a direct Iranian proxy, and obviously if they threaten Israel, we're not going to have peace.
All right, I now have Peter Baum, and I request him to join us back in the discussion here.
Hello.
Hi, Peter. Requested to comment on the talks between Lebanon and Israel. Do you think the desired outcome will be achieved?
Going back to your previous question about American policy in the Middle East, I think this is a prime example of how American policy in the Middle East is a force for good. Now let's understand what's happening here. Lebanon has been wrapped in turmoil for the last 50 or 60 years. One of the reasons has been because it has allowed an Iranian-backed proxy, Hezbollah, to wreak havoc both domestically and in starting wars with Israel. Now, for the first time since I've been following this subject and in my particular field, it's clear that the Lebanese government have now determined that a weaponized Hezbollah can no longer be tolerated if Lebanon is to go for democracy. The fact that recently the Lebanese government met with the Israeli government to talk about ways of how this objective is to be achieved, told Lebanon just a few days ago that it would stop its military activity in Lebanon whilst the Lebanese government were given time to disarm certain elements of Hezbollah, of course with American support and confidence. I think is a real sign how the three countries, Lebanon, Israel, the United States of America, are working together to destroy, if not completely, but certainly weaken dramatically the influence of Hezbollah militarily. Now, that's not to say that Hezbollah can't proceed in the political arena. Of course it can, because the Shias in Iran are very close to Hezbollah. They have support there, if there is no doubt. But to have an armed group working and destabilizing a democracy cannot be allowed to be tolerated, which Lebanon has tolerated since the 1980s. So I think, going back to your previous question, what Marco Rubio is doing, and hopefully he'll be successful in achieving, providing Israel and Lebanon are on the same page in trying to demilitarize Hezbollah.
All right. Thanks once again. That's all the time I have, unfortunately, for the discussion here. But Peter Baum joining us from London, viewers. And with that, let's now swiftly move on. Afghans who risked their lives working alongside U.S. troops nearly 2-decade-long war are now facing an uncertain future in the U.S. This follows a shooting incident in Washington last month where 2 National Guard soldiers were allegedly attacked by an Afghan national. In response, President Donald Trump announced to halt the migration from Afghanistan and 18 other nations, triggering a review of residency grants. Many Afghans are now living in limbo, fearing deportation back to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Green card holders, asylum applicants, and those with parole status are facing delays in their paths to citizenship. Former embassy workers and others who had rebuilt their lives in the U.S. are particularly anxious as their hopes for safety and stability are now at risk. As uncertainty looms over the futures of many Afghan refugees, a few have shared their personal fears and struggles. Let's listen in.
All was my life was that I wish I go and walk somewhere that nobody judge me, nobody looks to my clothes. I wear back my scarf. I was like, okay, everyone is good. Now I feel like what's happening in the news, social media, I feel like maybe people will hit us back, and maybe people see us as a dangerous people. Maybe people doesn't like me anymore. Should I wear my scarf or no?
On the second try, I finally succeeded to get inside, and they checked all of my documents, including my wife's passport. So the living condition in the airport for few days that we stayed in there, it was like the worst condition in there. So there was no water, no food, nothing. And we spent 4 days in there. It was too cold during the night in there.
My mother is. And it's such a sensitive topic for me because I feel the guilt of every other survivor that goes through something, and I feel like I have left her behind, like I have done something unforgivable.
And that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World.